yourself facing the direction that we came from. The steep mountain slope is now on your left.
One of the world's great railway treasures is the White Pass and Yukon Route. Based in Skagway, Alaska, this narrow-gauge railroad has been in operation almost continuously since 1898. While the line has not seen freight service in over 40 years, it has become increasingly popular with tourists visiting the last frontier. The history and spectacular scenery of the railroad combine to make a thrilling experience, which many of the railroad's passengers have found to be unmatched anywhere else in the world. We visited the White Pass and Yukon Route in 2021, while the world was still easing out of the COVID-19 pandemic, and we took a ride on this magnificent railroad from Skagway to Glacier siding. The entire route was not open to the White Pass summit or into Canada, as the railroad had opted to perform some heavy maintenance in anticipation of not having a summer tourist season. Despite the shorter ride, the experience is just as enjoyable, and we invite you to come along as we ride this historic railroad. Our train is powered by engine 3004, which is new to the railroad. Built by National Railway Equipment, the locomotive is designated an E3000cc-DC and was originally built as part of a larger order for an Australian freight operator. When the original purchaser opted not to take the full order, the remaining units were changed from standard gauge to narrow gauge and delivered to White Pass. The locomotives produce up to 3,300 horsepower using an EMD 645 series engine block. White Pass now owns 6 of the locomotives, which have replaced some of the classic Alco and General Electric engines that have worked on the railroad since the 1960s. We depart Skagway from what is known as the railroad dock. Most of the trains during cruise season depart from dockside and return to the downtown Skagway depot.
Go over some important safety information. And I want to start by emphasizing that we are riding a real train. So throughout our excursion this morning, we will be experiencing train motion. At times the ride can be a little bumpy, and you'll often feel a swaying motion in your car. All this movement is safe and it's normal, but please be careful and have 3 points of contact while you're up and about. While we were boarding the train earlier, I'm sure many of you noticed that there is some space to stand outside. Each car has 2 exterior platforms, one at each end. You will have the option of making use of them during our trip, but they are currently closed. We're required to wait for approval from the conductor before stepping outside. When that happens, I'll make an announcement, but for the time being, please remain inside and comfortable. You will have the option of moving about during our ride. It's very important that everyone understands there is absolutely no crossing from car to car. And this is not because we don't want anybody to have any fun, it's because we don't want anyone to prematurely exit the train ride while it's in motion. So this is for your own safety. There is no crossing from car to car. Even if you see our train crew crossing from car to car, this is not an invitation to do so yourselves. Please be very careful when resting your hands near open doorways and windows, because the movement of the train often causes them to slam shut on their own. They will do this unexpectedly and with a surprising amount of force. So please keep all hands and fingers clear of open doorways and windows. Inside each car is a real kerosene oil stove. They were lit this morning for your comfort. If at any point you are uncomfortable with the temperature in your car, please check in with one of us. Do not attempt to adjust them in any way yourselves. Let's see, smoking and the consumption of alcohol are prohibited on board our train at all times. This includes the restrooms and the exterior platforms. And finally, just another reminder about everybody's least favorite policy, masking. Federal law requires everybody on board this train, to have a face covering worn securely over your mouth, chin, and nose throughout the entire duration of the trip, including outside on the platforms. I know everybody is very, very tired of having to do this. I am too, so we appreciate your extra help and effort in doing that because it allows us to run safely. Okay, now I'd like to introduce you to the crew. First and foremost is our conductor, Jeremy Simmons. He is in charge of the train, and assisting him is our brakeman, Chris Williams. Our engineer who operates our locomotives is John Westfall. All these guys have pretty important jobs and they don't always have a chance to answer questions, so that's why we're here. There are two other guides on board the train with us this morning. They are Tyler and Lindsay. You'll be meeting either one of them here momentarily. If you haven't already, they're going to come through your cars here to introduce themselves. My name is Zane. I will be the narrator and the tour guide for the whole train. I'll be using this microphone to tell you a bit about the history of the Klondike Gold Rush and this railway, as well as pointing out some of the scenery along our trip. Unlike a bus tour, our train can't stop for pictures. So part of what I'll be doing today is queuing everybody up for photo opportunities. And I will make these announcements with enough lead time for the front of the train to be able to get their cameras ready. So if your car is not directly behind the locomotive, you will experience a few moments delay before you're able to see what I'm talking about. Alright, I know that was a lot of information, so I appreciate your attention. Let's talk about the trip that we'll be taking today. We're going to be, we are departing from Skagway. This is milepost 0, and we're going to be traveling along 14 miles of narrow gauge track and scaling nearly 2,000 feet in elevation to reach the Glacier station at milepost 14. Because the bridge is out of service at milepost 15, we will be turning the train around at milepost 14, again, which is Glacier Station. I do want to alleviate any concern you might have about whether or not there is a better side of the train to be seated on. The answer is that it's a round trip. Everybody will see both sides equally. So whichever side you have currently, you will have the opposite side for our southbound return back to Skagway. Okay, with all that said, now I would like to officially welcome you aboard. The Klondike Gold Rush spurred the construction of this railroad over 120 years ago. This is the White Pass Yukon Route. It all began in 1897. That was when the world learned that gold had been discovered in what's called the Klondike region of the Yukon in Canada. So, contrary to what you may have heard, gold was never found here in Skagway. It was discovered 600 miles inland. However, thousands of hopeful and desperate Americans chartered passage to this area believing that it had. And they were all exceedingly disappointed to learn that not only was the gold 600 miles away, but the first leg of their journey required them to get over these extremely steep and dangerous mountains. They would have to do this on foot and with enough supplies to last them months in the wilderness. Their only options for accomplishing this extremely grueling task were two trails, the only paths that led through the coastal mountains around us. They were to the Klondike. So while gold was never actually discovered here in Skagway, the most direct and quickest way to get to it was. And it is for this reason that Skagway established itself as the gateway to the Golden North.
As we pass by the Skagway shops, we get a glimpse of some of the railroad's other equipment. The older locomotives are sitting outside, along with some coaches and work train cars. Many of the coaches on the railroad were built new as late as 2007, and many are built on top of old flat cars, but all of them are built to the same classic design.
Skagway behind, we'll pass the historic Gold Rush Cemetery on our right-hand side. And its unique coloration comes from glacial silt, a fine sediment left behind from the glaciation that trenched out this valley and sculpted the surrounding mountains over many thousands of years. It all occurred over the course of two separate ice ages. The glacial watershed brings snowmelt and runoff into this river. It carries with it this silt, giving the river this unique coloration. We don't often see fish in the Skagway River as a result of this, but sometimes we do. For the most part, the silt in the water keeps them out. It makes it difficult for them to detect their prey, and it also inhibits the growth of algae, which is that prey's primary food source. However, some fish have discovered that these conditions make for a safe predator-free spawning zone, like the hooligan. Yes, that is its name. It's called the hooligan. The hooligan used to be called the candlefish. Early pioneers realized that the fat content of the fish was so high that you need only dry it out and string it out on a wick to make it into a candle. Thankfully, because of advances in lighting technology, we no longer require candlefishes, and I think this is a development that the fish are very grateful for. Anyone under the age of 16 does also need to be accompanied by a responsible adult while outside. And finally, when you step out there, you're going to notice that you won't be able to hear my narration.
Denver is located at milepost 5.8. Some trains make stops here for hikers wishing to spend a day in the Alaskan wilderness. A donated caboose is used by the Forest Service as a shelter for these adventurers. Just beyond Denver, the train crosses the East Fork of the Skagway River.
We are currently traveling through a portion of the Tongass National Forest. Skagway is a relatively small Alaskan community. It's about 1,000 wintertime residents who stay here year-round, and the town is about 22 blocks long by 4 blocks wide.
As the train climbs along the hillside, we can see Skagway in the distance, at the north end of the Lynn Canal. Royal Caribbean's Ovation of the Seas is in port today. The Skagway River, which we followed out of town, is now below us in a deep canyon.
By now, I'm sure many of you have noticed that there is a roadway across the gorge to our left. That is the South Klondike Highway. Skagway is unique in that it is one of only 2 other southeastern Alaskan communities connected to the road system. See the words that read "On to Alaska with Buchanan." This doesn't have a whole lot to do with the gold rush or our railway. It's a reference to George Buchanan, who was a wealthy coal that did things like, like hiking glaciers, kayaking, learning outdoor skills. Mr. Buchanan taught them how to travel like diplomats. And part of the deal was that they were required to work in their communities to earn a portion of the travel costs themselves, so that they had an opportunity to learn the value of hard work and earning and saving money. This program went on successfully. Got together to ride our train one last time because it was a special part of their trip. And they actually hiked across the gorge to paint their program's proud slogan on the rock face to commemorate their inspiring leader. In contrast, the South Klondike Highway took about 20 years to complete, and that was with modern equipment. Now, there are many. Cue for this waterfall is a large pipeline with camouflage netting. When you see it, be on the lookout.
Black Cross Rock is named because of the black cross marking it, memorializing 2 workers who were killed under it during the railroad's construction.
Now, I'm sure many of you recognize the name Bridal Veil Falls. It's true, many waterfalls do share this name. This one is ours. Like I said, there's a clearing coming up on the left. We'll have a great view of it here momentarily.
The Sawtooth Mountains rise high above the train. Cloud cover is typical in this part of Alaska during the summer months.
Season this year, which is why our excursion will be stopping at mile 14 to turn around and return us to Skagway. In the bridge's current state, I don't believe we'd be able to make the jump.
Beyond Glacier siding, the railroad turns and crosses the Skagway River to climb the other side of the canyon. You can see the ledge where the track runs, as well as the gap where the railroad is replacing their bridge.
Glacier Station is also an important staging area for our maintenance of way crew. This is milepost 14, so here very shortly, you're going to feel the train slow down and come to a stop. And I just want to remind everybody to remain on board. This won't be an opportunity to disembark the train. It is a long 14-mile hike back to Skagway, so you'll definitely want to stay on board. It's much easier. You find yourself facing the direction that we came from. The steep mountain slope is now on your left, and the valley is on your right. Speaking of which, our engineer John Westfall is driving our train down the siding, so that's a good chance to see him here on our right. And our shiny new locomotive, which we purchased for this season.
At Glacier, we've stopped so the locomotive can run around the train. The siding has been lengthened in recent years, and the engine disappears for several minutes before returning to couple up to the south end of our consist.
This is a little tradition that we have aboard the train. We always sell a hat each year, and it is exclusive to the train. You can't find it anywhere else, not even in our own gift shop. It comes in any color as long as that color is black. It features our logo embroidered on the front, Skagway, Alaska on the back, and that is fully Velcro adjustable.
See the goat?
Once the air is charged on the train and all handbrakes are off, we begin the descent back to Skagway. For the return trip, we will ride on the outside platform of our car and take in the sights and sounds on both sides of the train. We get another look at Bridal Veil Falls in the distance. The rapids closer to the train are part of Captain William Moore Creek. Foy is milepost 11.4. The station was named for Hugh Foy, who was the superintendent of construction when the railroad began. A small patch of snow is still valiantly clinging to life in the middle of August. We are coming back around through Denver and crossing Bridge 5A. A ballast regulator waits patiently on the main line as we enter the Boulder siding. As we creep down to the south end of the siding, another train comes around the curve and passes by on the main line. Engine 3003 is pulling the same passenger consist that we saw parked south of the shops on our way out of town. Most of the new locomotives wear the same red and black livery, which is new to the railroad. Number 3001, however, is painted in the classic yellow and green paint that has been part of the railroad's identity since the first diesels arrived. Number 109 is a Montreal Locomotive Works DL535E, built new in 1971 from an Alco design. The railroad once owned 10 of these, plus another that was built with a wide-nose safety cap. Only 3 are still in service. 2 were scrapped, 4 have been sold to the Durango and Silverton, and 2 are in storage. The so-called shovel-nose locomotives in the background were built by General Electric with Alco engine blocks. 3 are still listed in service, and the rest are up for sale. 1, number 100, was scrapped in 2015. The wide cab DL535E is visible at this end of the storage track, and next to it is steam locomotive 69. The steamer is operational, but has been stored since 2013. Railroad regulations prohibit riding on the platforms in the Skagway city limits, so we return inside for our arrival downtown.
As we come to a stop here at the depot, we need all passengers to remain on board and in your seats until you hear from me or see one of our train crew wave you off. The rest of our train crew, we want to thank you all so much for choosing to ride with us here on the White Pass and Yukon Route Railroad. If you had any last minute questions for us or anything else, we will be down on the ground in bright yellow vest.
Rotary Plow Number 1 was retired in 2019 after a 24-year encore, and placed on display here next to steam locomotive 52. It appears unlikely that the railroad will operate the rotary again. Its run completed, our train backs out of the Skagway depot and will return to the railroad dock for another load of cruise passengers. We hope you have enjoyed this experience on board the White Pass and Yukon Route. Although we've made every effort to bring you the full spectacle of the line through video, this railroad is truly one that must be seen in person in order to truly appreciate its majesty. Trains run frequently during the summer, and you can visit the railroad's website at www.WP&YR.com for schedules and tickets.